Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DIS webinar, Expert Advice on Digitally Transforming Your Service Office. We are looking forward to hosting this session today. With over 27 years of experience working in the digital transformation space and over 10 years in the heavy equipment industry, I'm pleased to introduce today's speaker, Jim Henderson, Executive Partner at Exemplary Group, Senior Advisor at Machinery Advisors Consortium, and Curry Management Certified Consultant. So without further ado, I'd like to kick things off and hand the mic over to Jim to get started.
Thanks, I appreciate it, Laura, and welcome everybody who's watching today. Glad to have you and hope we can share some information that'll help you today. So a couple of things now that I wanted to do is go ahead and just start walking through a little bit here. Just a little bit about me first. I do give advisory services to industrial equipment dealers and manufacturer reps, really in profit engineering, technology transformation, and M&A. My background, you can see below, goes from industrial engineering and systems engineering. Started out with planning how military equipment would be serviced whenever it's deployed or not deployed. From there, went into opportunities to help digitize paper, automate workflows onto SaaS software, and then worked with embedded machine software, so control panels within a car or a tractor, things like that, before coming over to the industrial equipment dealers with a goal of helping with this technology transformation that is going to be occurring. I got started with Curry Management in this area, and then I still work with them and have been working with machine advisory consortiums, and look forward to helping everybody out today. So with that, looking at this now, today's agenda, what we want to do is go through a little bit about what does digital transformation mean, successful transformation, talk about some specific examples with job planning and monitoring, and then looking at how do you look at your key measures, customer satisfaction and profitability among them. As you have questions, jot them down. We'll have Q&A at the end, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that people have. In looking at this now, when we talk digital transformation in a service department, it can mean a lot of things. For today's conversation, I wanted to narrow it down to kind of what I'll call 6 levels, starting with a job board, for those of you that aren't doing that electronically today, work orders, moving from paper to a work order that's based on a computer, an electronic work order. Then communication, shifting from things that are, phone-based or email to more automated, to more readily available, more real-time. And then the reporting and analytics. So how can we get the information that people want when they want it, both inside of our organization and outside of the customer. I think where things are going, and a lot of you will have seen this, there's machine data now. How do we use that in our service department? Can we use it to automate, to improve what we're doing? And then finally, I'll have what I call machine-driven scheduling. And that's where a machine may say, hey, I'm at this number of hours, I need preventive maintenance, as a simple example. If you look at the military, there are things that are moving to self-diagnosing and fixing. I don't know that we're there, and that's what we're talking about in service at this point. But I think that's something that for this conversation, those 6 levels will work. When I talk about successful transformation, what are we talking about, and kind of giving a high level of this? Well, before, there's what we call the pre-digital culture. So you have the psychology of paper and really physical things. In a way, when you take something physical and you complete it, it gives you sort of a dopamine hit, a rush that, hey, I got that done. You feel good. In the post-digital culture, the question becomes, do I get that same feeling when something's electronic and done? Do I see that and feel the same way? Also, how am I going to operate and do things? Is it the same or is it different? That's what we want to look at. And when you begin to go into this, really what you're doing is you're changing, to use a sports analogy, how you play the game. Like, what are we going to do differently, and how are we going to operate differently? And in some ways, it's the exact same as it was before you went to a digital transformation, and in other ways, it's completely different. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is reap the benefits in terms of our employees being able to do a good job, our customers being happy and satisfied with what we're doing, and as a company, we're able to grow more and make more profit. And that's really what successful transformation encompasses, is that journey from one point to the other, and everybody understanding now this is how we want to play the game. In that, what I see in successful transformation, and this is from years of experience going back to very early system changes where we're getting rid of paper and we're moving to digital formats. What I've realized over the years is it used to be you think, oh, people aren't picking this up quickly. We just need to train them more. And then it became, no, it's the people implementing. They aren't telling us enough. They didn't think of everything. But when I distill it down, I think the core essence comes down to understanding this. And particularly in a service department, I find this to be true. People like to know how to do their job. They like to know the steps to get it done. So if I am going to create a work order, I do this. If I'm going to write out a work order, I do these sets of steps. To close it, I do that. To bill it, I do this. I'm an expert. I know what to do and how to do it, and I'm very good at my job. When I start transforming, that changes. Now all of a sudden I'm not sure what to do. I don't quite understand what to do or how to do it. So yesterday I was an expert, and I like that better. I think I want that. But now we aren't going back. So part of the transformation is getting people to tomorrow, or the goal, which is, again, they feel like I'm the expert. I know what to do and how to do it. One of the things that I see is companies don't leave enough time for this, and they don't understand how much time it will take for people to begin to feel like they're an expert. There's also this gap in the middle where as a company do you get expertise? You used to know who to go to that could tell you how to do something or what to do, but now does anybody really know? Well, we're figuring it out and learning. So this becomes, the path of this becomes really important in my experience, that when people understand this and plan for it and build the projects around this, they tend to be more successful. When I look at companies that have missed the mark on transformation, the ones that didn't quite get there or took more time or more pain or more money than they wanted, these are some of the things I've seen. So in your own company, and as you're thinking about this, these are some things to consider as you go through and have a checklist. So one is what I call work at a job description level. So I'm a service coordinator. I do these sets of high-level tasks. I'm a dispatcher. I do those. What I find is that the companies that are the most successful have their processes mapped out, and not only mapped out, but they understand the steps or the tasks to get it done. What happens in a transformation to digital is there's a lot of what's done that becomes taken for granted. Sort of like tying your shoes. If you know how to tie your shoes, but then you go to teach a 4 or 5-year-old how to tie their shoes, there's a lot of detail that you don't remember, and all of a sudden you're on YouTube. Hey, how do I teach my 4-year-old to tie shoes? The same thing's true here, where that level of detail becomes important and how we get that out. The second thing in that is what I'll call the common or undocumented knowledge. That's how we do things. When it's this customer, we do it that way. I don't have it written anywhere, but it's in people's minds and they know how to do things. Again, a uniqueness to the industrial equipment industry is that people tend to be in jobs a long time. And so this becomes a great amount of knowledge over time. And now when I move to a new way of doing things and people aren't quite sure, all that undocumented knowledge has to come out. And a lot of times it isn't uncovered until you're in the middle of trying to do it the new way. So having some way of hitting a roadblock, oh, here's what we do, here's how we fix that, becomes very important. The second part is there's not enough training and not enough time to adapt. I find most companies want to go quick. They want to keep the cost down. They want to get the benefits as fast as they can. Almost always, more training time is needed. It takes multiple times for people to do something to learn it. Oh, you went to training, you should know that. No, it takes 7, 10, 12 times, 12 is actually the number, to learn a new way of doing things. And it can be more. It can take months to actually feel like I'm an expert. So that idea of, hey, I've trained you, now you're learning now, and I graduate up levels to be an expert. This is one of the things that, again, it's important in considering what the transformation is going to take. I find this especially true with technicians, where companies want to minimize the unbillable time. So I want these guys to be billable. I'm going to bring them into a class for 2 hours or half a day, put them out there and expect them to do it this new way. And that is something that I find, I understand financially why they want to do it, but I think it's one of those times where you actually end up costing more lost time and money by rushing it up front. So this is one that takes time to plan. The other path is how do I become the expert? Am I working with the different vendors I have? Do I have somebody that just takes on this as the super user? How do I become the expert and become that person who knows what I'm doing? If I don't want to be an expert in the overall system, I just want to know how to do my job well. How do I do that? What is that going to look like? And what's it going to take for me to get there? The fifth one here, understanding that the cultural change, as well as how we do our daily work change. The culture change is part of it, where culture comes from the top down in the organization, and how well the company is used to changing and managing change is a big factor in this. If companies haven't changed very often and they aren't used to change, it's going to be harder to make it through that than if they made a lot of changes and their change muscles are strong, so to say. So one of the things that I would say here is it can also be starting in small steps and small bits and make it where you're continually changing and learn to change. But those two pieces need to come together. There's a culture that has to change, our daily work has to change. And finally, in that era where I'm not the expert and I don't know what to do, I don't know how to get the answer, how are you set up that people can get answers when they get frustrated or have concerns? They can talk to somebody and figure things out. And again, this is one where it can be remote, it could be on site, but how to set that up and how to have that person becomes very important until you have staff that can answer the questions and guide people through things. So these are the 6 points I see that where companies miss the mark on transformation, and where we'll want to keep moving on that and going forward. So I want to take a minute and talk about the measures of success. So part of the reason why companies do a digital transformation is they want to improve certain aspects of their performance. They want to be more profitable. They want to have better response times with the customers. They want to do a better job on service. In general, what I see in service is the core measures don't actually change when you go from paper to digital. What I see is that you may say the standard is going to be higher, but you still want strong utilization of your technicians. You still want a high first-time fix rate. You still want your customers to be highly satisfied each time you do service. And so those aren't going to change. We may say with this system, we're going to be able to do better and a better job. And that's typically what I'll see, is that measure and the way we're trying to do things will stay the same. What I do find is that for an organization that's not used to things being on the computer versus on paper, that the ways to visualize the work and the status become the most critical thing to add as a way to understand what's happening and know where they are. So it's not technically a measure of success other than in this way. Does my team, does my management know how to find the status very quickly overall or of a specific item? And that becomes a frequent point that could be frustration if they don't know how. So let's make sure they know how, and we have that set up as a part of this project. I'm going to step back now and take a minute and look at a service department and just one of the ways that we can draw this out. So we have the customer in this scenario. In this model, this is a service coordinator model where we will have a coordinator who's responsible for interfacing between the customer and the technician. So they'll take calls, they'll do scheduling, dispatch, the admin, and the billing. Some organizations will split those out to different people. In that case, you could just line them up across from the right from that service coordinator. But what it forms is this digital diamond where you have the customer, the technician, the service office, and service management that want to communicate and work together digitally. And as we look at this and we think about how we're going to work and what works today, when the diamond is working well, everybody's communicating well, faster, better. They understand what's happening, and we get to leverage the transformation to digital in a way that helps us all. So as we think about this, we want to think through these different roles and how they're going to be impacted as we go through our transformation. In that, there's side roles that like a warranty admin may be a specialist. You may outsource that. You may centralize it. That will also be digital, and it'll move over to that. Just like you may have a trainer for technicians or somebody that they go to when they need coaching or help on how to actually do the technical work. That again may be something that's there. I may have a service writer or quoter that instead of the service coordinator quoting, I may go ahead and have somebody else that does that. Again, they would become part of it. The core of it in this model is that I'm going to take these as my 4 core roles. I'm going to make sure that they understand how we work and what we do. Now, this next slide, I want to take some time to explain it and begin to talk a little bit about process and where we are as we look at digital transformation and what we want. I'm going to use this to go back to our levels and talk to those 6 levels a little bit and what we have there and what we want to do and what we want to set up. So as I look at this, it's a simplified process. Admittedly, there could be a lot more branches off of this, and your processes will have more. But at a high level, we're going to get a request for service. It may come in on the phone. It may come in off of the website or a system I have. You may have it set up where somebody can make a mobile request and do it that way. Some organizations may make it via text or chat. There's a myriad of ways that you're going to set up for your customers to be able to say, hey, I need service. Here's what I want. At that point, we get to creating a work order and scheduling it. This is where we're going to hit the first point of planning and monitoring. So now, as I look at the schedule, I may have PMs planned. I may have open times. I'm going to now say, where can I put that work order? I want the right person for the right job. I'm going to try to minimize travel. We're going to go ahead and get that scheduled out with that work order. If it's an emergency break fix, I start moving things around and seeing. This is something now where when I come in as a technician, I look at my schedule for the day and see what I'm going to need to do and what I'm supposed to be doing that day. So in that's going to build out a daily schedule, which in a way I show below that I'm trying to get down to, here's my daily schedule and here's how I know what I'm going to do and that I have what I need. Once it's scheduled, we know we're going to need to have the parts that we need. And so part of this is that there's a coordination between parts and service, as you know, to go ahead and make sure that the right parts are available for the work. And if they're not, we need to reschedule it. And we get that set up so that's all in place and we have that ready to go so that we get our first time fix and somebody doesn't go out there and find they don't have a part that they needed. Obviously, if it's a diagnostic visit, it's going to be a little bit different. I may not have the part because I don't know the issue yet. But that's where we're going to set that up as we move through this process. And one of the places that I see the biggest benefit of going to a work order is once I'm on site, I can then write down the diagnostics that I've done, what the issue is, and then what we're doing to fix it. In that, as that work order closes, the standard that I like to propose to people is in certain work orders, we can automatically bill. So if it's a PM job or something that's very standard, we're just going to send that bill out. I find that people get in the habit of reviewing everything. And once you go to digital, what actually needs to be reviewed and why is a question to be asking the organization. Why do we need to view that? Why do we not? Why is this important? Because one of the leading indicators of your health of your service department and your efficiency is WIP. And so what we want to do is keep our WIP tight and clean as we move through here. And digitally, we should be able to both automate the billing or flag things that need to be reviewed, either because it's a certain dollar amount or because of something that was put down in the notes that we want to review before we send it. And that's how then we'll get that set up and out the door. So this is something that I see that one of the best scenarios to have the benefits of this is I can reduce my WIP and get those bills out sooner, avoiding that hockey stick at the end of the month when I have a big pile of paperwork orders that I'm trying to close out and bill here at the end of the month. So that's what we want to see is we want to see a certain percentage done within 24 hours and ideally everything and a certain percentage done almost as soon as the work order is done, it heads out the door. So in that, this sets something up. The other advantage of that with the billing is that when you bill quickly, there's going to be fewer questions. It's fresh in everybody's mind if there's an issue, and we can go ahead and bring that up and make sure we're okay. So that's an overview. There's a lot more detail and nuance you can get into here about how your specific processes work. What about different scenarios and what ifs here? But taking these processes at a level, starting with the high level and then saying, okay, what does somebody have to do to create a work order? What do they have to do to schedule it? What does the technician do when they look at their daily schedule? What do they do when they show up to work on a work order? What do they do as they work on the work order? What do they do when they close the work order? What does our office do when we go to bill that work order? These are the things that we want to map out and then get down again to that idea of how do I do my task? So I understand what changes between today and after digital transformation. This is the scenario that I would say is worth a significant amount of time and effort when you look at transforming. Here's what it is today. Here's what it's going to be when we're done. In that, I think one of our key goals is that we want to drive higher customer satisfaction as we go digital. As people get used to things like Amazon and UPS and FedEx and these systems that automatically update us and tell us where things are and the truck is 3 miles away, what are their standards and what are they expecting? But really, in a lot of ways, people want really basic things. They want it to be easy to request service. They want to know the status, and they want to know that what they expected happened. So these 3 measures are a nice way to look at, hey, these are the things that lead to satisfaction, and we're going to be able to help improve those as we go through our digital transformation. Your dealership may have certain ones that you want to focus on more than others. This is where you can go ahead and look at that and get that set up. I like focusing on profitability. It's the fuel that makes businesses work. And when we talk about in this scenario, as we go electronic, we're still going to focus on some of the same things that are core and always there. So if a technician works 8 hours, did he have 8 hours on work orders? That's one of the key measures that we want to make sure that we have in place, and we can get that. For billing efficiency, am I getting fewer write-downs? What are write-downs? Am I getting increased pickup hours? What's happening there? Again, if I'm doing job costing versus time and material, are the jobs being done? Are they beating the standard, or are they taking longer, and why? We want to still be able to get that data, and really this type of data is typically easier and better to get after digital transformation. And finally, what we're looking for is higher productivity. So one of the key measures in the Curry model is the technician to office personnel ratio. So how many technicians do I have for each person in the service office? And I want to keep pushing that higher and higher while maintaining my satisfaction and maintaining the efficiency of what I have. And that will help the overall productivity and help our profitability as we move, with an eye towards we want exceptional customer satisfaction and service. There's a lot of detail below the profitability that can happen. At a high level, satisfaction, profitability, employee engagement, I want to make sure those all are in place as we go through the digital transformation and after we go through it. So that's the ones that I want to do to drive higher profitability. So with that, I tend to like shorter webinars. I think getting to the point is good, and then asking questions. I would go back to these levels, the job board, the work orders, the reporting and analytics, the communication. What am I getting data off of a machine, and is a machine sort of self-requesting service? Starting with that, going through our processes today, tomorrow, how do we move through that arc to get through that? I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm not an expert phase. And I come back to being an expert. So at a high level, that's sort of what I would look for in service. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Laura, and see if there's any questions.
Perfect. Yeah, we do have a couple questions in. Let me just take a look here. Is there an ideal ratio of tech to admin?
That is a good question. So I think that the model today would be one office person for 5 technicians. I've seen that as high as 1 to 12 or 15, depending on how automated you are. But I would say most organizations are 5, 6, or 7 technicians per office person.
Perfect. Another question we received are, what about warranty administration?
Well, and that's where, again, depending on how big you are as an organization, with multiple branches, what we find is warranty is a very specialized skill around, and it works differently for each particular manufacturer. So having one person that understands the rules and how to submit things and how to follow up and where to go is the most efficient way. To me, this is one of the areas that getting to digital from paper really helps, because now I can route everything to one person. I have one specialist. It becomes a very strong payback when I increase my warranty claims. So I would definitely set that up and have that set up as a part of the process.
Awesome. If anyone has any other questions, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A. And Jim, if you'd like to share your screen again, you'll be able to share your contact information with everybody who attended today's presentation.
Good point. Thank you. Yep. There's mine. Then I think people may know the information on DIS, but I think there were questions on that. You had that as well. So
perfect. Yeah. So both of the contact information is at the bottom here. One other question we received are, what about techs that don't want to use electronic work orders?
I think that culturally, that's one of the hardest questions that you face. And the reason why is technicians are very hard to find. It's the limiting factor in nearly every single dealership is more technicians. They would love to have more technicians. So that is one that is a challenging question. It'll depend on your organization. I've seen organizations go from one end of the spectrum to the other. One is, I'm going to go ahead and let this group of people keep using paper. We're going to put them into certain types of work where that's okay. And I've seen other organizations that say, hey, if it's this way or the highway, and they will move away from the technicians that won't change. In my mind, if it's an experienced high value technician, I think that's where we add. My preferred way of doing it is to add extra coaching and extra help and just say it's going to take them more time. And they've mastered it one way for years. Now, how can we get to this new way? What works for them? And if they're high enough value, you could even say, we'll start on paper and we'll have somebody internally put it in, but they'd have to be a very high value person to add that extra cost. So those are the scenarios I've seen out there and what you might want to do.
Perfect. Do you have an example of what a typical whip would look like?
That is a good question. I don't know that I would call it typical. What I would say is that what we want to do is look at the flow through it, and we're looking for blockers. So how long do we expect it to take to move from one step to the next? And when we start to see things pile up, then that's a sign that we have some sort of issue that we need to address. So I think that's actually more what I would look at, is to say, I think that's where we have that. In machinery advisors, there are some people that have more detailed information on WIP and standards there. And if you reach out to me, I can give you those that are there. But again, I would say that what you're looking for is efficiency going through the process. So something takes 3 weeks, 4 weeks to be billed. What's the problem? A common problem with WIP is we needed a PO and didn't get one. We did the work, we can't bill it, we got to get the PO. Or now I schedule things, but it's not getting fixed because we don't have the parts. Well, supply chain issues, that may be happening, but is it really the parts or did something else happen? What's going on? Is it a scheduling challenge? So I find that the more important thing with WIP is here's the flow we expect, and where are things piling up is what you want to use to focus on and fix operational challenges.
All right, that looks like that's all the questions for today. So thank you, Jim, for your insightful webinar, and we want to thank everyone who joined today.